Michael Jordan learns a childhood friend is struggling with medical bills, then steps in silently. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan's story began in Wilmington, North Carolina, where his roots ran deep. Growing up in a modest household, he learned the value of hard work, respect, and loyalty from his parents, James and Dolores. His father worked tirelessly as a mechanic, while his mother kept the family together, balancing the household with love and discipline. Michael had 3 siblings, and the dynamics of the Jordan family were marked by constant support and encouragement. The values instilled in him from a young age would play a central role in his journey to becoming the greatest basketball player the world had ever seen. But it wasn't just his family that shaped Michael, his friends were equally important. One of his closest friends was Ben, who lived just a few houses down the street. From a young age, Ben and Michael shared a love for sports, particularly basketball. They spent countless afternoons shooting hoops together, honing their skills, and talking about their dreams of one day making it big. While Michael's natural talent on the court was evident from an early age, Ben was more of a steady, determined player, someone who had a quiet strength that allowed him to support Michael when he needed it most. The bond between Michael and Ben was solid. They were both athletes, but their friendship was about more than basketball. They spent time talking about life, discussing everything from their favorite players to their hopes for the future. Ben was someone who kept Michael grounded, someone who didn't see him as a future NBA superstar but as a regular kid with big dreams. It was a friendship built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of the struggles and triumphs of growing up in a small town. As Michael's skills on the basketball court began to stand out more and more, he found himself at a crossroads. He was driven to be the best, to prove he could make it to the top, but the road wasn't always easy. His early years at Laney High School were marked by frustration, as Michael was cut from the varsity team during his sophomore year. The setback stung, and for a brief time, it made him question whether he had what it took to succeed at a higher level. But Ben was there to remind him that it was just a bump in the road. He encouraged Michael to keep pushing, to work harder, and to use the experience as motivation. Michael took Ben's advice to heart. He spent countless hours practicing, working on his jump shot, his footwork, and his overall game. He wasn't going to let a small setback define him. By the time he was a junior, Michael had earned a spot on the varsity team and quickly became the star player. He led Laney High to victories and began to attract attention from college scouts. His dream of playing basketball at the highest level was no longer just a dream, it was becoming a reality. Ben, meanwhile, continued to support Michael, attending every game and cheering him on from the stands. He never pushed Michael to achieve anything he wasn't ready for but always offered encouragement when needed. Even as Michael's fame began to grow, Ben remained the same, steady, humble, and always present in Michael's life. Michael's ascent to basketball stardom was driven by his own relentless determination, but it was clear that the foundation of his success was built on the strong friendships and values he had cultivated from the start. As Michael's high school career came to an end, it was clear that his future in basketball was bright. The University of North Carolina offered him a scholarship, and Michael eagerly accepted. He was excited to take the next step in his journey, but it also meant leaving behind his home, his family, and his childhood friend. The transition was difficult. Michael had never been away from his family for such an extended period, and while he was excited about the opportunity, he also felt a sense of homesickness. Ben had been a constant presence in his life, and the thought of not being able to just walk down the street and talk to him was hard to accept. But Ben was always there for Michael, even from a distance. Whenever Michael came home for holidays or summer breaks, the two would reconnect, picking up right where they left off. They would talk about basketball, about the pressures of college, and about the challenges of growing up. Ben, now a local figure in Wilmington, had a life of his own but always made time to check in with Michael, offering advice or just a listening ear. It was during these visits that Michael realized how much his hometown, his family, and his childhood friendships meant to him. By the time Michael left for the NBA, his bond with Ben had deepened. Michael had become a household name, but he remained grounded, never forgetting where he came from. Ben, though far from the bright lights of the NBA, had never stopped supporting Michael. He was still the quiet, determined friend who stood by his side, even as Michael's career began to skyrocket. Their friendship, built on years of shared experiences and mutual respect, was one of the few things in Michael's life that hadn't changed despite his newfound fame. As Michael entered the NBA, he faced new challenges. The pressure to perform at the highest level was immense, and the expectations from fans, coaches, and teammates were unrelenting. But Michael was ready. He had always been driven by the need to prove himself, and the NBA was no different. His early years with the Chicago Bulls were marked by struggles, both as a team and individually. Michael was learning how to balance his desire to dominate with the reality of team dynamics. But he never lost sight of what truly mattered, the love of the game and the people who had helped him get to where he was. Throughout this journey, Ben remained a constant presence. Though Michael was now living in Chicago, Ben's support never wavered. He stayed in touch, sending words of encouragement when Michael needed them most. Michael's rise to superstardom was not just a result of his incredible talent, it was also shaped by the friendships and values that had always grounded him. Ben had helped instill in Michael the importance of loyalty, humility, and gratitude, qualities that would guide him through the highs and lows of his basketball career. In the midst of his meteoric rise, Michael had not forgotten his roots. He remained deeply connected to the people and places that had shaped him. The friendship with Ben had a profound impact on his career and life, and it was clear that Michael's success was not solely due to his athletic ability. It was also a result of the strong, supportive relationships that had helped him navigate the challenges of life. As his career unfolded, Michael's connection to his past would continue to influence his decisions, his actions, and his view of the world around him. Though the world would come to know Michael Jordan as the greatest basketball player of all time, those who knew him best, his family, his friends, and the people who had been there from the start, understood that his true greatness lay not just in his on-court achievements, but in the character and humility that had driven him to success. And at the heart of it all was a friendship that had begun on a basketball court in Wilmington, North Carolina, a friendship that would stand the test of time, even as Michael Jordan's legend continued to grow. As Michael Jordan continued his journey through the University of North Carolina, his life began to change in ways he hadn't fully anticipated. Though he had always been a standout player in high school, playing for UNC marked the first time he truly faced the intense expectations that came with being a top-tier prospect. It wasn't just about making the team or earning respect anymore, it was about meeting the demands of the college basketball world, where every game was an audition for the NBA. But even amidst the pressures of stardom, Michael's unwavering focus on the game remained his anchor. UNC's basketball program was legendary, and Michael quickly found himself surrounded by some of the best players in the country. The competition was fierce, but Michael didn't shy away from it. In fact, it only pushed him to work harder. His determination to become the best player on the floor was evident in every practice and every game. Yet, it wasn't just his individual performance that set him apart, it was his ability to elevate those around him. His presence on the court commanded attention, but his unselfishness and team-first mentality made him a leader. He wasn't just there to showcase his skills, he was there to help his teammates grow and develop as well. As the season progressed, Michael's game evolved. He refined his offensive skills and began to develop the defensive tenacity that would become a hallmark of his career. His confidence grew, but so did his understanding of the game. Every play, every pass, and every shot was carefully calculated. Michael was becoming a student of the game in a way that went beyond what came naturally to him. He learned the intricacies of team dynamics, the value of court awareness, and the importance of timing. This wasn't just a game for Michael, it was a chess match, and he was determined to be the master. But even as Michael's college career flourished, his bond with his childhood friend Ben remained as strong as ever. Despite the distance and the different paths their lives had taken, Michael and Ben kept in touch. While Michael was adjusting to college life and working tirelessly to refine his skills, Ben was still in Wilmington, navigating his own life. Ben wasn't chasing the same dreams as Michael, but he had his own quiet aspirations, ones that centered around family, community, and a sense of stability. Their friendship remained rooted in the same shared values they had grown up with: loyalty, support, and a genuine care for each other's well-being. Michael's success at UNC was undeniable, but it didn't shield him from the struggles and doubts that came with it. The weight of being one of the top prospects in college basketball was always there. The pressure to perform was unrelenting, and with every game, there was always someone waiting to see if Michael could live up to the hype. The expectations were immense, but Michael took them in stride. He was driven, and he knew that failure wasn't an option, not because of what others might think, but because of his own internal drive to be great. One of the defining moments of Michael's college career came in 1982, during the NCAA championship game against Georgetown. Michael was only a freshman, but he was already making waves with his impressive performances. With the game on the line, Michael sank a clutch shot that helped seal the victory for UNC, securing the national title. It was a pivotal moment, not just for the team, but for Michael himself. It solidified his belief that he could perform under pressure, that he could be the one to take the shot when the game was on the line. It was the first taste of what would later define his legendary career, the ability to rise to the occasion and make history when it mattered most. The championship win brought Michael widespread recognition, and his confidence grew. He was no longer just another talented college player, he was a national sensation. The attention from NBA scouts and the media intensified, but Michael remained focused on the task at hand. UNC's basketball program had a storied history, and Michael was now a part of that legacy. But while his future in the NBA was starting to look inevitable, Michael didn't lose sight of what mattered most: the game itself. His time at UNC taught him more than just basketball. It taught him discipline, work ethic, and the value of being part of a team. He had learned from his coaches, his teammates, and from the experiences that came with each victory and defeat. As his time at UNC came to a close, Michael was faced with a decision: leave college early and declare for the NBA draft, or return for another year. It was a difficult choice, but in the end, Michael made the decision to pursue his dream of playing in the NBA. With the backing of his family, friends, and coaches, Michael entered the 1984 NBA draft, ready to take the next step in his career. The Chicago Bulls selected him with the 3rd overall pick, marking the beginning of what would become one of the most iconic careers in basketball history. But even as he prepared for the NBA, Michael's connection to his roots remained strong. He had come from a small town in North Carolina, and no matter how far his basketball journey took him, that part of him would always be there. His friendship with Ben was a reminder of the simple values that had shaped him: the importance of loyalty, hard work, and staying true to yourself. Ben was still in Wilmington, quietly rooting for Michael from a distance, and while their lives had taken different turns, their friendship remained a cornerstone in Michael's life. The transition to the NBA was a challenge in its own right. Michael was no longer the big fish in a small pond, he was now playing alongside some of the best athletes in the world. The competition was fierce, and every game presented new obstacles. But Michael was prepared. His work ethic, honed during his time at UNC, carried him through the early struggles. His game was already well-rounded, but he knew he had to push himself even further to reach his full potential. Michael's first season with the Chicago Bulls was a mix of excitement and frustration. He quickly became one of the most electrifying players in the league, but the team itself was still finding its footing. The Bulls were far from championship contenders, but Michael's talent was undeniable. He was already a force to be reckoned with, capable of taking over games with his scoring, defense, and leadership. But the team wasn't quite there yet, and Michael knew that he had more work to do, not just as a player, but as a leader. Throughout his time in Chicago, Michael's drive to be the best only grew stronger. He wasn't content with individual accolades or personal success, he wanted championships. He wanted to prove that he could lead a team to the ultimate prize. But as the years went by, it became clear that winning titles would take more than just his talent. He needed teammates who could rise to the occasion with him. The challenge of building a championship team was daunting, but Michael's focus never wavered. As Michael continued to grow in the NBA, Ben's life took a different direction. While Michael was chasing greatness, Ben faced struggles of his own. His financial stability was tested, and his health began to decline. Although they were separated by distance, Michael remained in Ben's thoughts, and Ben in Michael's. The journey that had started in their small hometown of Wilmington was far from over, and even as their paths diverged, the bond they shared remained a constant in both of their lives. Michael Jordan's transition from college basketball to the NBA wasn't just a shift in his career, it was the start of a new chapter in his life. After being drafted by the Chicago Bulls in 1984, the bright lights of the NBA began to shine on him. His first season was filled with excitement and challenges. As expected, his natural talent stood out immediately. His ability to score, his defensive prowess, and his competitive fire were all apparent from his very first game. But despite his individual brilliance, the Bulls were a team in turmoil, and the road to success was going to be harder than he imagined. The early years in Chicago weren't easy. While Michael was quickly becoming one of the best players in the league, the Bulls were struggling to build a competitive team around him. The franchise had not had much success in the past, and the team was plagued by a lack of cohesion and leadership. Michael was left to carry much of the load on his own. Despite his individual success, the team wasn't winning, and Michael's frustration began to grow. He was a fighter, someone who demanded greatness not only from himself but from everyone around him, and it became clear that he wouldn't settle for mediocrity. Michael's hunger for greatness fueled his drive, but it also created tension within the team. He was demanding, sometimes even harsh on his teammates, and his intensity wasn't always met with the same level of commitment from others. He wasn't afraid to call out teammates, but he also didn't have the support he needed from the front office to turn the Bulls into contenders. As his frustration mounted, it was clear that he needed more than just his own brilliance to reach the top. The support of his teammates was just as crucial, but they didn't always meet his expectations. Michael's success was undeniable, but without a team that could complement his skills, the championships he so desperately wanted remained just out of reach. Ben, meanwhile, was still back in Wilmington, watching as his childhood friend began to rise to fame. Even from afar, he could feel the weight of Michael's journey. The pressures of the NBA were a far cry from the simpler struggles Ben faced in their hometown, but there was a sense of quiet pride in watching Michael's rise. Ben's own life had not been as smooth as Michael's. While Michael was starting his career with the Bulls, Ben was grappling with personal challenges, his finances were strained, and his health was starting to decline. As the years went by, Ben's situation worsened. His health problems became more serious, and the medical bills started piling up. Michael, on the other hand, was focusing all his energy on the court. His game continued to improve, but he was still searching for the right mix of teammates and leadership to bring the Bulls to the promised land. In 1989, the Bulls finally found some success, making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. However, they ran into the Detroit Pistons, a team known for its brutal physicality and relentless defense. The Pistons, led by Isiah Thomas, were a thorn in Michael's side, and their style of play was the complete opposite of what Michael wanted to face. The series against the Pistons was brutal. The physicality of the Pistons wore Michael down, and for the first time, it became clear that even the greatest player on the planet couldn't win a championship on his own. The Pistons' dominance exposed the flaws in the Bulls' lineup and underscored the need for a change. Michael wasn't just frustrated with the series loss, he was frustrated with the realization that even his individual greatness wasn't enough to win a title. That offseason, he vowed to get better, and this time, it wasn't just about improving his scoring or his defense, it was about making the team better. Michael knew he couldn't do it alone anymore, and the next step in his journey would involve making his teammates better, lifting the entire team to a higher level. Michael's frustration with the Pistons became a driving force. He knew that the only way to win was to become even more dominant, both physically and mentally. The Bulls' management recognized this too, and in 1989, they brought in Phil Jackson as head coach. Jackson, with his unique coaching style, implemented the triangle offense, a system that emphasized teamwork, passing, and unselfishness. For Michael, it was a turning point. He had always been a great individual player, but now, he had to learn how to play within a system and trust his teammates. At first, Michael struggled to embrace the triangle offense. He had spent his entire career being the primary scorer, the go-to guy, and now he had to learn to share the spotlight. But Michael, ever the student of the game, quickly realized that this system could make him and the team better. Jackson's teachings transformed Michael's approach to the game. He became not just a scorer but a leader, a facilitator, and a defender. The Bulls became a more cohesive unit, and Michael's growth as a player was evident. The team's success wasn't immediate, but they started making progress. By 1991, the Bulls were poised for greatness. They made it to the NBA Finals, and this time, they faced the Los Angeles Lakers, a team led by Magic Johnson that was filled with championship experience. The Lakers were the defending champions, and many expected them to dominate. But Michael and the Bulls were on a mission. In the finals, Michael Jordan unleashed one of the greatest performances in basketball history, leading the Bulls to a 4-1 victory and securing his first NBA championship. The world finally saw what Michael was capable of when he had the right team around him. He was no longer just a player with individual brilliance, he was a champion, and he had proven that he could lead a team to the ultimate prize. It was a victory that changed everything for Michael and the Bulls. Michael was no longer just a star, he was now recognized as one of the greatest players in the history of the game. But even as the Bulls celebrated, Michael's drive to be better, to keep winning, only intensified. The pressure to repeat, to prove that their championship wasn't a fluke, weighed heavily on Michael. But he welcomed it. Michael knew that greatness wasn't just about winning once, it was about sustaining it, year after year, against the best teams in the league. Ben, on the other hand, was struggling. His medical bills had become insurmountable, and despite the pride he took in watching his friend's success, he was facing his own battles. Michael's rise to fame had been both inspiring and painful. The distance between them had only grown, and Ben found it difficult to reach out for help, not wanting to burden Michael with his troubles. Michael's success was a source of pride for Ben, but it also made him feel more isolated as his own life seemed to be falling apart. The mounting medical bills weighed heavily on him, and he didn't know where to turn. Michael's victory in 1991 wasn't just about basketball, it marked a new chapter in his journey. He had reached the pinnacle of the sport, but the road ahead would be just as challenging. The success of that season would serve as a reminder that no matter how high he climbed, the journey was far from over. The real test of his greatness would come in the years ahead, as he faced new rivals, new challenges, and new obstacles. Yet, through it all, Michael would remain the same, driven, focused, and determined to prove that his greatness was more than just a moment in time. And for Ben, though the journey was far more difficult, the bond they shared would continue to remain a quiet, constant source of strength. The Chicago Bulls' breakthrough in the early 1990s marked a shift not just for the franchise, but for the NBA as a whole. Michael Jordan had established himself as one of the league's top talents, but there was still more to prove. After the 1991 championship victory, the pressure to repeat and solidify their place in NBA history loomed large. It was not just about individual performance anymore, it was about building a legacy. For Michael, the 1992 season was about proving that he could lead the Bulls not only to one title but to multiple championships. And as with everything else in his career, that pursuit was driven by his insatiable hunger to be the best. The Bulls entered the 1992 season with a sense of confidence but also an understanding of the challenge ahead. They had overcome the mighty Los Angeles Lakers in the previous year's finals, but now the real test came. Could they maintain their dominance? Michael Jordan wasn't the only superstar in the league anymore. The competition was fierce, with teams like the New York Knicks, the Boston Celtics, and the Detroit Pistons all vying for supremacy. But Michael's confidence was unwavering. His dedication to improving his game, honing his skills, and refining his leadership made him a force to be reckoned with. The 1992 season was highlighted by an iconic moment in Michael's career, the Dream Team. The United States men's basketball team, consisting of NBA legends like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Charles Barkley, competed in the Barcelona Olympics. Michael Jordan, at the height of his powers, became not just a player but a symbol of American basketball excellence. The team dominated the competition, winning the gold medal, but it was Michael's performance, his leadership, his poise, his drive, that captured the world's attention. He wasn't just the best player on the court, he was the heartbeat of the team, a player who could both inspire and intimidate, all while showcasing his remarkable skills. While the Dream Team solidified Michael's place in the global basketball landscape, his focus remained on the Bulls. The team was now in full championship form. With the addition of key players like Scottie Pippen, who had continued to improve year after year, and the leadership of coach Phil Jackson, the Bulls began to refine their identity. The triangle offense, which had initially been a challenge for Michael to adapt to, now became second nature. The system relied on unselfish play, constant ball movement, and a commitment to teamwork. It was a style of basketball that Michael embraced, and under Jackson's guidance, the Bulls began to flourish. By the time the 1992 finals rolled around, the Bulls were ready. They faced the Portland Trail Blazers, led by Clyde Drexler, a formidable opponent who many considered a worthy challenger to Michael's throne. But the Bulls, as dominant as ever, made quick work of the Blazers, winning the series 4-2. Michael Jordan's performance throughout the finals was nothing short of spectacular. His ability to score from anywhere on the court, his defensive prowess, and his leadership were on full display. In Game 1 of the series, he scored 35 points and made key contributions in the fourth quarter to secure the victory. But it was his performance in Game 1's first half that would become legendary. Michael famously hit 6 three-pointers, including 5 in the first half, silencing critics who had doubted his ability to be a versatile, all-around player. That game was a statement, not just about Michael's skill set but about his ability to rise to the occasion when it mattered most. The 1992 finals cemented his status as the best player in the world. However, with success came new challenges. The pressure of being the reigning champions was immense, and the expectations were ever-growing. Michael's fierce desire to win continued to push him beyond the limits of what seemed possible. But as the season wore on, the toll of his relentless drive began to show. The physical and emotional demands of the game started weighing heavily on him. Off the court, Michael was constantly dealing with the pressures of fame, the media's scrutiny, and the demands of being a global icon. But no matter the pressure, no matter the weight of expectations, Michael Jordan was determined to persevere. It was what made him great, and it was what would ultimately define his legacy. In 1993, the Bulls made their third consecutive trip to the NBA Finals, a feat that only a select few teams had accomplished. They were once again the team to beat, but this time, the stakes felt even higher. The series against the Phoenix Suns was one of the hardest fought of Michael's career. The Suns, led by Charles Barkley, were no slouches. They had the talent and the drive to challenge the Bulls' supremacy. But as Michael had done so many times before, he rose to the occasion. His performance in the finals was extraordinary, averaging 41 points per game, and he once again secured his place as the NBA Finals MVP. In Game 4 of the series, Michael scored 55 points, marking one of the most iconic performances in NBA Finals history. But it was more than just his scoring ability. Michael's leadership, his ability to make his teammates better, and his clutch performances in the most critical moments helped the Bulls secure their third consecutive championship. The Bulls had done it again, 3 titles in 3 years. The legacy of the Bulls' 1990s dynasty was firmly established, and Michael Jordan's place in NBA history was cemented. But despite the triumph, there was a sense of tension brewing behind the scenes. The demands of being a champion were taking their toll on Michael. He had always been driven by the need to win, but now the weight of those expectations was beginning to affect his mental and physical health. Off the court, Michael's life had also changed dramatically. In July of 1993, Michael's father, James Jordan Sr., was tragically murdered during a robbery while driving through North Carolina. The loss was devastating for Michael, who had been incredibly close to his father. James Jordan had been his biggest supporter, his mentor, and a constant source of guidance throughout his career. Losing his father in such a tragic way left Michael reeling. For the first time in his life, he questioned his place in the world. His drive to succeed, his ambition to be the best, had always been fueled by his love and admiration for his father. Now, with his father gone, the pain was overwhelming. Michael's grief, coupled with the mounting pressure to continue his reign as the best player in the world, began to take its toll. In the wake of his father's death, Michael made the surprising decision to retire from basketball in October of 1993. The world was shocked. It seemed like the end of an era. The man who had redefined the game of basketball, who had brought the Chicago Bulls 3 championships in a row, was stepping away from the sport at the peak of his powers. His reasons were deeply personal. He wanted to honor his father's memory and take some time to reassess his life. Michael's decision to retire was a testament to his dedication to family, to understanding the need to step away from something he loved in order to heal. But even as he left the game, the legacy of his 3 championships and his dominance over the NBA remained. The basketball world would never be the same without Michael Jordan, but little did anyone know, this would not be the last they saw of him. The question remained, what would Michael Jordan's next chapter look like, and could the man who had conquered basketball come back to reclaim his throne? Michael Jordan's retirement in 1993 stunned the basketball world. He had just led the Chicago Bulls to 3 straight championships and was at the peak of his career. Yet, after the tragic murder of his father, James Jordan Sr., Michael made the unexpected decision to step away from the game. It wasn't just a break, it was a full-fledged retirement. Michael, a man who had been consumed by his love for basketball and his need to be the best, now found himself in a place where he needed to rediscover purpose. During his time away from basketball, Michael tried to find solace in baseball, a sport his father had loved. In 1994, he signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox, starting his baseball career with the Birmingham Barons, a Double-A affiliate. The transition from basketball to baseball wasn't easy. While Michael's athleticism was undeniable, baseball presented challenges that even his remarkable talents couldn't immediately overcome. His time with the Barons was a stark contrast to the fast-paced, high-pressure environment of the NBA. Baseball was slower, and Michael had to adjust to the intricacies of the sport. But baseball was never meant to be Michael's new calling, it was an escape. His time with the Barons gave him the distance he needed to grieve and process his father's death. However, baseball didn't provide the same thrill and drive that basketball had. He was still a competitor at heart, and baseball lacked the intensity that had defined his success in the NBA. It was clear to Michael that he wasn't truly fulfilled. While he respected baseball, his true passion was always basketball. The itch to return to the game was growing stronger. In March of 1995, after just over a year away, Michael made the decision to return to the NBA. The news of his comeback was met with a mix of excitement and skepticism. Would he still be the same player after stepping away? Could he regain the competitive edge that had once made him the best? Michael wasn't concerned with the doubts of others. He knew that his decision was about more than just proving something to the world. It was about proving something to himself. He had always pushed himself to be great, and he wasn't done yet. Michael's return to the Chicago Bulls was seamless. He rejoined the team mid-season, and while there were questions about whether he would immediately return to his old form, Michael wasted no time proving his doubters wrong. His first game back was a reminder of why he had been so dominant before. Michael scored 19 points in 28 minutes in a win against the Indiana Pacers, showing that while he may have been gone, his skills had not diminished. However, it wasn't just his individual performance that made his return special. Michael was reintegrating himself into a team that had grown without him. The Bulls were still a solid squad, but they hadn't won a championship without him. Scottie Pippen had emerged as the leader in Michael's absence, and the team had developed its own identity. Michael's return, while welcomed, required adjustments. The chemistry that had been established during the Bulls' earlier championships was still there, but the dynamic between Michael, Pippen, and the rest of the team had shifted. There was no longer just one alpha on the team. Michael had to blend his aggressive style with the new flow of the Bulls' game. The transition wasn't easy for Michael, but it wasn't as difficult as it could have been. His relationship with Scottie Pippen was key to their success. Michael trusted Pippen more than anyone on the team, and their unspoken connection on the court made their partnership stronger. While Michael's return was the catalyst for the team's resurgence, it was clear that the Bulls' success would depend on how well Michael and Pippen could coexist. They both had the same goal, to win. And despite any personal tension that might have existed between them, their shared commitment to winning made their partnership unbreakable. The 1995-1996 season proved to be the turning point for the Bulls. With Michael back in the fold, they returned to dominance. The Bulls finished the regular season with an NBA record 72 wins and made it to the playoffs with the expectation of reclaiming the championship. Michael's return was more than just a comeback, it was a rebirth. He was playing with a renewed sense of purpose, eager to prove that his best years weren't behind him. Every game, every play, every possession mattered to him. He wasn't just back for the sake of it, he was back to dominate. The 1996 playoffs were a spectacle of Michael's brilliance. He led the Bulls through the Eastern Conference, where they defeated teams like the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks, setting up a showdown with the Seattle Supersonics in the NBA Finals. The series was a chance for Michael to reaffirm his place as the best player in the world. The Sonics were a tough, defensive-minded team, but Michael's presence on the court was overwhelming. He averaged 27.3 points per game in the finals, leading the Bulls to a 4-2 victory. It was his fourth NBA championship and third consecutive title, and Michael was once again named Finals MVP. This championship solidified Michael's return not just as a player, but as the leader of a championship-caliber team. He had proven that he was still capable of leading the Bulls to greatness, and the team was once again on top of the NBA. But even as the Bulls celebrated their success, Michael's mind was already on the next challenge. It was no longer just about the titles, it was about maintaining excellence, staying hungry, and continuing to evolve as a player. The 1996-1997 season saw the Bulls continue their dominance, with Michael leading them to their fifth NBA title. He had regained his form and had grown into an even more complete player. He had learned to trust his teammates, and the triangle offense, which had once seemed like a restriction, had now become a tool that maximized the talents of everyone on the team. Michael's game had changed. He was no longer just a scorer, he was a leader in every sense of the word. His passing, his defense, and his ability to make everyone around him better made him an even more formidable force. Throughout this run, Michael's relationship with his teammates was key. He had always been a demanding leader, but now he understood the value of bringing out the best in those around him. He pushed his teammates to be better, but he also supported them when they needed it. The chemistry between Michael, Pippen, and the rest of the Bulls was stronger than ever. The combination of Michael's leadership, Scotty's versatility, and the complementary skills of players like Tony Kukoc and Steve Kerr made the Bulls virtually unstoppable. Yet, even as the team succeeded, Michael was aware that the end of his career was inevitable. He had already achieved everything he had set out to do in basketball. His legacy was secure, but his desire for greatness remained undiminished. He wasn't just playing for the present, he was playing for the future. Michael Jordan had become not just the best player of his time but a symbol of what it meant to work hard, to persevere, and to never accept anything less than greatness. As the 1997-98 season began, Michael's focus remained clear: to win one more championship with the Chicago Bulls and secure his legacy as the greatest basketball player of all time. But even as he drove toward that goal, Michael's return to basketball had proven something that was perhaps more important than the victories and accolades. It showed the world that no matter what challenges he faced, Michael Jordan would always rise to the occasion. His resilience, his leadership, and his unrelenting drive were the true hallmarks of his greatness. As the 1997-1998 NBA season began, Michael Jordan was once again poised to make history. After taking a year and a half off from basketball to grieve the tragic loss of his father and briefly pursuing a career in baseball, his return to the NBA had rejuvenated not only the Chicago Bulls but the entire basketball world. The previous 3 seasons had been marked by dominance, but now, at the age of 35, Michael was approaching the twilight of his career. With 5 NBA championships already under his belt, he had proven himself as the best basketball player of his generation. However, the 1997-98 season was different. This wasn't just another year, it was the final year of a dynasty, and Michael knew it. The Bulls were facing increasing pressure. Despite their dominance in the 1990s, the internal tension within the team was palpable. Rumors swirled that coach Phil Jackson, who had led the Bulls to 5 championships, was not returning after the season. Michael had always been a fiercely competitive player, but he was now more than just a star, he was the face of a dynasty. His leadership had brought the Bulls through multiple championship runs, but his weariness was showing. The demands of being the best, coupled with the ever-growing expectations placed on him, were taking their toll. Yet, Michael's resolve remained as strong as ever. His focus was singular: win one more championship, end this journey on top, and leave the game with a legacy that would endure forever. The tension between Michael's desire to win and the looming end of the Bulls' reign was reflected in his interactions with his teammates. The relationship between him and Scottie Pippen, while always crucial to the success of the team, had been tested in recent years. Pippen had, for a time, been the clear number 2 to Michael's number 1, but with Michael's brief absence, Pippen had stepped into a leadership role. Yet, despite their combined success, the duo's partnership was not without friction. Scottie's role was often a balancing act. He was asked to play in Michael's shadow but also take on an expanded leadership role when Michael wasn't on the court. Pippen's frustration was evident in his sometimes passive-aggressive demeanor, but when the two were on the court together, their connection was undeniable. They had formed one of the greatest basketball partnerships in NBA history, and their synergy was key to the Bulls' success. However, the constant tension, especially with Phil Jackson's future uncertain, left the atmosphere around the team somewhat strained. Dennis Rodman, the enigmatic and unpredictable force on the Bulls, also added another layer of complexity to the season. Rodman's eccentricities were well known, his colorful personality and penchant for off-court drama were part of his charm, but they were also a distraction. As the season went on, Rodman's behavior became even more erratic. His commitment to the game had never been in question, but his off-court antics sometimes overshadowed his play. Still, his role as a rebounder, defender, and team agitator was invaluable to the Bulls' success. Michael, in his leadership role, had the challenge of keeping Rodman focused on the game, while simultaneously keeping the team united in the face of growing media attention and speculation. Despite the internal tensions, the Bulls were once again the team to beat in the NBA. Michael's performance throughout the regular season was nothing short of spectacular. He proved that, despite his age, his skills were as sharp as ever. His scoring ability, leadership, and clutch performances were on full display. The 1997-98 season was filled with spectacular moments, none more so than his legendary performances in the games against the Utah Jazz, a team that would go on to challenge the Bulls in the NBA Finals. As the season progressed, Michael's play became even more of a statement. This wasn't just a farewell tour, it was a final mission to secure his legacy. Michael's determination was infectious. His focus rubbed off on his teammates, and the Bulls moved through the regular season with purpose. The team finished with a 62-20 record, securing the top seed in the Eastern Conference. Despite the internal distractions and the looming uncertainty of what would happen after the season, the Bulls were back where they belonged, at the top of the NBA. The 1998 playoffs began with high expectations. The Bulls were no longer just a good team, they were a dynasty, and Michael knew that the road to another championship would be a battle. The first challenge came in the form of the Indiana Pacers, a team that had made significant improvements over the past few seasons. The Pacers were led by Reggie Miller, a player who had developed a reputation for his clutch performances and ability to hit big shots in critical moments. Despite Miller's best efforts, Michael's experience, leadership, and sheer will to win were too much for the Pacers. The Bulls won the series in 7 games, but it wasn't easy. The Pacers had pushed the Bulls to their limit, and the wear and tear of the long season began to show. The Eastern Conference Finals would prove to be even more grueling. The New York Knicks, led by the fiery Pat Riley and the strong defensive presence of Charles Oakley and Allen Houston, proved to be formidable opponents. The series was marked by intense physical play and constant emotional swings. The Knicks were tough, aggressive, and unafraid of Michael Jordan. But once again, Michael's resilience and his ability to perform under pressure were on full display. The Bulls advanced to the finals after a hard-fought 6-game series, with Michael's leadership carrying them through every challenge. As the NBA Finals approached, the Utah Jazz were waiting. Led by John Stockton and Karl Malone, the Jazz had been one of the best teams in the league throughout the 1990s. They had made the finals in 1997 and had been one game away from a championship, but their hopes had been dashed by the Bulls. This time, they were determined to do whatever it took to dethrone the defending champions. The matchup was set, and the stage was one of the most anticipated finals in NBA history. The Jazz were eager for redemption, while the Bulls were determined to prove that their dynasty wasn't over just yet. The final series was a back-and-forth battle, with both teams trading blows throughout the games. Michael was once again playing at an elite level, but the toll of the long season was becoming more apparent. He wasn't just playing through the pressure of the game, he was playing through physical exhaustion and the emotional weight of knowing this could be his last season with the Bulls. Despite the obstacles, Michael's desire to win never wavered. Every game, every possession, every moment was another opportunity to cement his place in NBA history. The most iconic moment of the finals came in Game 6, a game that would go down in history as one of Michael Jordan's greatest performances. The game was tied with less than a minute left when Michael, playing through exhaustion, hit a jump shot over Utah's Bryon Russell, giving the Bulls a 1-point lead. The shot, now known as the last shot, was the culmination of Michael's legendary career with the Bulls. The Bulls won the game, and with it, their 6th championship in 8 years. Michael was named Finals MVP for the 6th time, a fitting end to his career with the team that had defined his greatness. The 1997-98 season had ended in triumph, but for Michael, the victory was bittersweet. He had accomplished everything he had set out to do, but the future was uncertain. The Bulls had reached the pinnacle of basketball once again, but Michael knew that this might be the end of his time with the team. The following months would bring decisions, changes, and reflections, but for now, Michael had secured his legacy as the greatest basketball player to ever play the game. He had achieved the ultimate success, not just with his skill, but with his leadership, determination, and ability to overcome any obstacle. The 1997-98 season was more than just another championship, it was the closing of an era, and the end of Michael Jordan's first legendary run with the Chicago Bulls. After the Chicago Bulls secured their 6th championship in 1998, the basketball world stood still, aware that they had just witnessed the end of an era. Michael Jordan had accomplished everything there was to achieve in the sport. He had led the Bulls to 6 NBA titles, earned 5 MVP awards, and solidified his place as the greatest player to ever play the game. Yet, as the confetti fell in Salt Lake City after the Bulls' Game 6 win over the Utah Jazz, the looming question remained, what was next for Michael Jordan? For Michael, the decision to retire was not an easy one. Basketball had been his life for as long as he could remember. It was more than just a career, it was a passion that defined him, a purpose that drove him to push beyond every limit. After the 1998 finals, Michael was faced with a choice: stay in the game and chase one more championship, or leave at the peak of his career and walk away from it all. The idea of returning to the NBA without the core group of teammates and the championship-winning formula was unappealing. The Bulls' dynasty was essentially over, and the thought of starting over without that familiar championship chemistry was daunting. Yet, despite the external pressures, Michael's decision was driven by a deeper, more personal reason. He felt that he had nothing left to prove. At 35 years old, Michael had already surpassed the expectations that anyone had ever set for him. He had done what no one thought possible, winning 3 straight championships, retiring, returning, and securing another three-peat. His legacy was complete, but the decision to retire once again was not just about that legacy. It was about something deeper, the desire for peace. Michael had given his all to basketball, and after so many years of sacrifices and challenges, he knew it was time to step away and focus on life beyond the court. In the years that followed, Michael's absence from basketball created a void that no one could fill. His retirement marked the end of the most successful era in NBA history, and no player could immediately replace his presence, on or off the court. The Bulls, without their leader, found themselves in a rebuilding phase, struggling to find the same success they had enjoyed under Michael's reign. Fans around the world began to feel the absence of the man who had defined the 1990s in the NBA. However, Michael's decision to retire the first time wasn't the final chapter of his basketball career. In 2001, after 3 years of enjoying life away from the sport, Michael Jordan made an unexpected decision. He would return to the NBA, but this time with the Washington Wizards. The move came as a shock to many. Michael had already achieved more than anyone could have dreamed, and yet, there he was, back on the court, donning a new jersey. The reasons for his return were many, but Michael knew one thing for sure: he still had a passion for the game. Even though he had nothing left to prove, the competitive fire inside him was still burning. He wanted to experience the challenge of playing once again, to see if he could still compete at the highest level and if he could help turn around a struggling franchise. When he first returned to the Wizards, the world watched closely, eager to see how the once infallible Michael Jordan would perform at 38 years old. The Wizards weren't a championship contender, and Michael's body was no longer the same as it was during his prime. But despite his age, he proved that his mind and will were as sharp as ever. He played with the same intensity that had defined his earlier years, and his scoring ability was still unmatched. In his first season back, Michael averaged 22.9 points per game, and while the Wizards didn't make a deep playoff run, his return was met with excitement and respect. But Michael's time with the Wizards wasn't just about individual success. It was about proving to himself that he could still compete at the highest level and mentoring younger players. His presence in Washington gave the Wizards a sense of legitimacy they had never had before, and his leadership was invaluable. Players like Richard Hamilton and Jerry Stackhouse flourished under his guidance. Michael wasn't just a player, he was a mentor, teaching the next generation of athletes how to approach the game with the same discipline, determination, and mental toughness that had propelled him to greatness. However, even as he competed at a high level, it became clear that Michael's body was no longer able to keep up with the grueling demands of the NBA. Injuries began to take their toll, and the wear and tear from years of playing at an elite level caught up with him. By 2003, Michael made the decision to retire for a second and final time. His final game with the Washington Wizards came on April 16, 2003, against the Philadelphia 76ers. He finished his career with a respectable 15 points in a losing effort, but his impact on the game transcended that final performance. His final retirement marked the end of an era, not just for the Washington Wizards, but for the entire NBA. Michael Jordan had left an indelible mark on the sport, and his departure left the league forever changed. Even after his final retirement, Michael Jordan's legacy continued to loom large over the basketball world. He had set the standard for greatness, and every player who followed, from Kobe Bryant to LeBron James, was measured against his legacy. But Michael's influence went beyond the basketball court. His impact was felt in the business world, as well. The Air Jordan brand, a partnership with Nike, had become one of the most successful athletic shoe lines in history. Michael's influence extended far beyond basketball. He was now a global icon, a symbol of success, excellence, and perseverance. But beyond the accolades, the championships, and the endorsements, it was Michael's work ethic and leadership that truly defined his greatness. He wasn't just the best basketball player in the world, he was a relentless competitor who demanded the best from himself and from those around him. His career was a testament to the idea that greatness isn't just about talent, it's about the willingness to work harder, to push through adversity, and to never settle for anything less than excellence. In the years that followed his retirement, Michael Jordan became a successful businessman, taking on ownership of the Charlotte Hornets. His role in the front office gave him a new avenue to influence the game, and he became an important mentor to the players he now worked with in a different capacity. The competitive fire that had once fueled him as a player now drove him as an owner. He sought to build a winning franchise and, in the process, gave back to the game that had given him so much. Michael Jordan's legacy wasn't just defined by the trophies, the championships, and the statistics, it was defined by his impact on the culture of basketball and the countless players who followed in his footsteps. His journey wasn't just about basketball, it was about proving that with relentless work and unwavering focus, anything is possible. He had started as a young kid with a dream, and he had achieved far more than anyone ever thought possible. Michael Jordan had forever changed the game of basketball, and his legacy would endure for generations to come. Michael Jordan's final retirement in 2003 brought the curtain down on a career that had defined an era of basketball. He had reached the pinnacle of the sport, claimed 6 NBA championships, earned 5 MVP awards, and solidified his status as one of the greatest players to ever play the game. His legacy, built on relentless drive, fierce competition, and unwavering commitment, transcended the basketball court. As the final whistle blew on his last game with the Washington Wizards, it seemed as though the world of basketball would never be the same. The days following his retirement were filled with reflection. The media celebrated his accomplishments, and fans from around the world paid tribute to the man who had redefined what it meant to be great. But Michael wasn't one to linger on his past achievements. He had always been looking ahead, setting new goals, and now, even in retirement, that drive remained within him. While many believed Michael would retire from the spotlight, he found new ways to stay involved with the game. In 2010, he became the majority owner of the Charlotte Hornets. The decision to enter the front office was a natural progression for Michael. He had always seen basketball as more than just a game. It was a business, a platform for change, and a place where talent, leadership, and culture came together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Now, as an owner, he was given the chance to shape the future of a franchise. His presence was felt across the league, not only as an owner but also as a mentor, inspiring the next generation of players to emulate his work ethic, discipline, and competitive spirit. While Michael was passionate about his role with the Hornets, his connection to basketball was more than just business, it was personal. He remained active in various charitable endeavors, using his platform to make a positive impact. His Jordan brand, in partnership with Nike, had become one of the most successful sports brands in history, but it wasn't just about shoes or merchandise. Michael used his influence to promote social causes, funding initiatives for underprivileged youth, and advocating for positive change in his community. His impact extended far beyond basketball courts, reaching into areas of education, health, and opportunity. Throughout the years, Michael's story continued to inspire countless athletes. Young players coming into the league saw in him the epitome of what it meant to be great. They admired his work ethic, his mental toughness, and his ability to perform under pressure. Michael had set the standard for what it meant to be a professional athlete, not just in terms of skill, but also in leadership and preparation. Players like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James often spoke of the influence Michael had on their careers. His influence, both directly and indirectly, became a guiding force for a generation of athletes striving to reach the same heights. But as the years passed, Michael Jordan's significance began to shift. He was no longer just a basketball player, he had become a cultural icon, someone whose impact was felt across multiple spheres of society. His story wasn't just about championships, it was about the lessons he imparted along the way. It was about the relentless pursuit of excellence, the willingness to push through obstacles, and the understanding that failure was not a reason to quit but an opportunity to grow. Michael's legacy was woven into the fabric of the game, and it became clear that his influence would continue for decades, even though his playing days were long behind him. As the decades passed, the conversation about Michael's place in history remained constant. He was, and still is, a figure that basketball fans point to as the ultimate example of greatness. And yet, in the final years of his life, as Michael became more of a statesman in the world of basketball, he began to shift focus toward his family and his personal legacy. For the first time, he could step back from the game and simply appreciate the impact he had on those who admired him. In his later years, Michael took on the role of mentor and family man. His children, who had grown up with the world's spotlight on their father, began to carve out their own paths in life. Michael's son, Jeffrey, pursued a career in business, while his daughter, Jasmine, worked in the sports industry. As they navigated their own journeys, Michael continued to be a guiding force, offering them the wisdom and knowledge he had gained from his own experiences. Though Michael was no longer playing the game, he stayed involved in basketball, using his knowledge and insight to help future generations navigate the challenges he had faced. His mentorship extended beyond the players on his team. He reached out to young athletes, teaching them not just about the game of basketball, but about the life lessons he had learned along the way. Michael believed that greatness wasn't just about being the best player, it was about the way you carried yourself, the way you treated others, and the way you responded to adversity. As his years with the Hornets continued, Michael helped reshape the culture of the franchise, imparting his championship mentality to a new generation of players and staff. Under his leadership, the team began to show signs of improvement, gradually turning into a competitive force within the league. Michael's legacy as an owner was just as impactful as his career as a player. He was a living example of what it meant to achieve greatness, not just through personal accolades, but through contributing to something greater than oneself. In 2023, a documentary detailing Michael's career and life, both on and off the court, was released to widespread acclaim. It was a testament to the lasting influence of his journey and the impact he had made on the game of basketball, the sports industry, and society as a whole. The documentary captured not just the wins and losses, the championships, and the records, but also the man behind the greatness, the man who had fought through personal challenges, overcome the odds, and redefined what it meant to be a champion. In his retirement, Michael Jordan had become a global ambassador for basketball. His influence extended far beyond the hardwood, and his name continued to be synonymous with excellence. Yet, as he looked back on his journey, Michael realized that his greatest legacy wasn't just the 6 championships or the countless accolades. It was the inspiration he had provided to millions of people around the world. Michael's story was no longer just about basketball. It was about resilience, about the power of belief, and about how one individual's pursuit of excellence could change the world. His legacy was cemented not only in the trophies and titles but in the hearts and minds of those he had inspired. Michael Jordan had transcended the game, and his story, one of determination and greatness, would continue to inspire future generations, long after he had left the court. In the end, Michael Jordan's career was more than just a chapter in the history of basketball. It was the foundation of a legacy that would live on forever, reminding us all that greatness is built not just in moments of triumph, but in the persistence to continue even when the world expects you to stop.